To speak to Jim Davidson. How are you?
I'm all right, Alex. How are you?
Do you know, I'm not bad for my age. It's a funny time, isn't it, this lockdown? Because you and I, at the beginning of it, were just sat here bored. And by the end of it, you've got tens of thousands of people tuning into your every word. It's an extraordinary thing, the YouTube, isn't it? Because it's a bigger voice than you could ever have in the theatre, numbers-wise.
Yeah, it is. In fact, I wanted to put a streaming thing together before the germs came along. Before lockdown, and it just so happened that we hit the ground running, me and my friend Robert, who are doing this. And of course, yes, we're using some of the old clips.
It's incredible how you make something very serious, very silly, and very funny, and it's utterly compelling. And I think TV forgets this, don't they? That the general public that you and I try and entertain don't want it rammed down our throats in this sort of supercilious way where we're thickos and we're made to feel stupid, because that's what journalists are trained to do, make them look more intelligent than us. You sort of bring the news to the people in a completely unique way, and I do think it's the future. We're sick of being spoken down to.
Well, I just tell it like it is. I look at how ridiculous things are. I'm not a particularly bright bloke. I left school. I didn't have any qualifications. I certainly never went to university. Otherwise, I'd be wearing a white shirt, white T-shirt and plimsolls and jeans with holes in and go on stage for 20 minutes and get appreciative nods from my peers. But no, I suppose I went to the University of Life, and I just look at how ridiculous things are and how frustrating things are, and our people like me don't have a voice. You know, working class people don't seem to have a voice. I can understand the frustrations of the black guys with Black Lives Matter. I get that. I'm not sure I quite get everyone else that jumps on that bandwagon as well. But I think there's a lot more to Black Lives Matter than just taking a knee and shouting out Black Lives Matter. You've got to prove that we're all equal. We have got to show the world that we treat everybody the same. But you don't draw the line on, you can't have a laugh with someone. You know, I said the other day on my TV show, on my streaming thing, that I won't do any black jokes again on stage, and I won't. But where does that end? If there's a black guy in the front row, do I engage with him, or am I frightened to death to say anything? It's a bit daft, I think.
Three of my favourite technicians of comedy were Bernard, Chubby, and you as a kid growing up. Not necessarily your material, and I've told you this before, we don't have to agree on everything, and I think that's wonderful too.
With regard to Bernard Manning, I've met him a few times and worked with him. He didn't understand racism. He didn't understand much at all. He understood Bernard Manning, and that was it. He lived in a little bubble where everything he did was okay. And I said, Bernard, you can't really do that. And he'd say, why? It's only a joke.
And it's intent. I mean, the word I keep using on this program is intent. Are people intending to be racist? This morning I read, we can't say master bedroom anymore at estate agents because it's racist. Well, of course it's fucking not. It's preposterous to even suggest it.
Oh, it's crazy. I was looking at the thing now. The Boston Red Sox are going to be have their names changed. Well, is it getting... there comes a stage where it's all these snowflakes and political nutters. These young girls are going around saying, "No, you can't call it a blackboard. You can't say this. You can't support Blackpool Football Club anymore. It's racist." It's getting silly. This is driving a wedge between people, and I'm not saying between black and white people. It's certainly driving a wedge between older people and younger people. You know, it's daft, and there's so many divides in this country. And we've got to look at all our differences and use that to make this country work a bit better. You know, I don't like currants. I hate currants and sultanas, but I like Dundee cake. Isn't that funny? Because it all goes together in one cake.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Very good
I don't want someone to say to me, "How dare you not like currants? You're a currant." I think that's what someone said to me. It sounded like that.
But isn't it interesting, again, that there's a very few voices in London who seem to represent 65 million people, and actually they don't. They just represent the 300 media people that they surround themselves with within W1. And I think what the internet's proving since lockdown, people like you, your channel is extraordinary, and I encourage everybody to go and see it. I mean, you're the most hysterical man I've ever seen do topical news. It's brilliant. Your comedy is fabulous. The way you address every story makes you think. And that's what news is meant to do.
And this is not a about young black men being stopped by police more, or more black people in prison. I spend a lot of time in prisons. People say, so you should. No, but I do. I spend a lot of time in prisons. And the people I've seen in prisons are criminals. They're good men that have done bad things, and they're all different colors. And it's as simple as that. I don't know the stats of how many non-Anglo-Saxon, Gamini white people are in prison. I do know about the veterans. We've got about 4,800 veterans in prison, and 96% of those are white people. So the black or the BAME society is not overrepresented in that department. That's all I know about. And I think we've got to stop. I mean, as I said the other day, so if they're saying we've got to stop arresting black people, there's too many black people in prison. Well, hang on a minute. Does that mean the policeman sees a black guy doing something wrong, he's not going to arrest him because the prison's full? I mean, there was a superintendent on the other day who got cut off by old Fatty on Sky, who was saying, the policemen are frightened to stop people that are non-white, Anglo-Saxony white people, because they're frightened of losing their job, losing their mortgages. This is not the way to do it. What we've created now is a fear of confrontation. We're creating, all of us, a fear of integrating. We're frightened to death to talk to one another anymore. Frightened to death. I mean,
but again, in real life,
how many more people can I be frightened to death of? Women, for one thing. Oh.
But again, in real life, none of us are scared. I mean, I wasn't aware of how angry people were about race until this happened in a small town in America with a man who was taken to the floor and indefensibly murdered by a policeman with his knee. But at the same time, we have to remember George Floyd was a career criminal who had 3 narcotics in his body at the point of death. Now, that's not a defense of the policeman, but to turn on the police as being the enemy and to try and get rid of them in England, I don't understand how the two have become connected. And then we add into that, well, we've got to ban Little Britain and all this bollocks. And before we know it, we're just screaming in thin air, akin to the trolls on Twitter. It's meaningless.
Yeah. Well, what you've got to look at, that everybody's got a voice now, and everyone's got a board to write stuff on to be heard, like a graffiti board. That's what Twitter is, and all these things. Now, let's just look at what went on with that George Floyd thing. That was completely out of order, and I hope that guy gets the justice that's coming to him. But it's the frustration of people. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. But it has spread so far now. We need to say, right, come on, everybody, let's get a grip of this. Do you really think our policemen are racist? Do you really think it's going to help to do all this stuff, to walk around with placards and whatever? And I just think that we need to seriously look at this. People need to, what's the outcome? Okay, Black Lives Matter. Let's all agree. Right, let's all wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, every single one of the people in this country. Is that enough? Of course it's not enough.
I'm also very concerned about things like the BBC throwing 100 million, which is a typically middle-class chino-wearing BBC thing to do, to throw 100 million at diversity. And as I said on Wednesday, and in fact, proportionally, BAME people are overrepresented percentage-wise on the BBC already and on TV, as are gay people, by quite a significant percent. So to throw money at it isn't resolving anything. It's just sort of buttering the parsnips to make it look... Yeah.
It's ticking a box. So if you're a young actor or a young comedian, and you're of an ethnic minority and you're on the television, you suddenly get a BBC TV show, deep down, are you going to be asking yourself, hang on, have I got this job just because I'm ticking a box for some do-goody snowflakey producer? No, everyone should have an equal chance. We're all coming to this world with nothing, and we can carve out a future for ourselves. It's difficult, it's the working class people. It's bloody hard. And no one seems to represent them. If you look at television now, it's the same old people with the T-shirts and the plimsolls on there, all sitting on these panel shows being self-centered and all funny. And if there's something wrong with you, if you've got a dodgy eye or a leg missing, or you're, slightly odd, the BBC will give you a TV series straight away, like they did me. And then they realised it was me and told me to fire it off.
It's interesting you say as well, the problem with Twitter, everybody's got a voice. They've also got an arsehole, and most of those stink as well. Can you remember the point when we couldn't debate anymore? Because I last did this type of phone-in 10 years ago or more, 13 years ago on Capital Gold nationally, and I got nothing like the vitriol online. And then when I started my career in 1998 doing this, there was absolutely none of it, because we could have a row about stuff and it didn't mean we were enemies. We are more polarized, and it seems to me the far left now are more vindictive, more screamy, more intolerant, as is proven with the J.K. Rowling thing at the minute with the trans. She simply questions something that even I can't understand, or probably you don't understand, and 90% of the population don't understand, and they're immediately saying, cancel her, kill her, murder her, cancel her, she didn't write Harry Potter. When did we become this sort of up our own bottoms?
Well, I think we probably have been like it quite a bit, but now everyone's got a voice. Everyone's a reporter. Everyone's got a camera. Regarding this trans situation, I talk about that quite a bit, because sometimes you can make a mistake. And I've done this. When I phoned up Kelly Maloney, and I knew Kelly when she was pregnant. And halfway through the conversation, I was congratulating him. So he said, I did it again then, congratulating her on Big Brother. And I mentioned the name Frank, and he said, it's Kelly, Jim. And because we were friends, he didn't take offence, and he knew it was just a slip. So you have to be careful you don't persecute people for just a slip. I mean, but
it's intent. Again, it's the same thing about the racism. Hang on, it's the same thing about the racism. Your intent wasn't to offend. It was just a mistake. And it seems like now you can't make a mistake. It's immediately off to have your head chopped off.
Well, we all need to calm down a little bit and start loving one another. Let's find a common denominator. We all like a good laugh, but we all laugh at different things. Right, we all like to eat food. We all like to drink too much. We're all in the same boat, and especially now, we need to liven up and love one another a little more. I've noticed this. The Charlton Athletic got beaten again by Millwall last night, and the language of the Charlton fans on Twitter slagging people off, it's because, you know, normally you'd keep that to yourself, but now you've got an outlet, and so more it comes out, and now you become an expert, and now everyone's got to listen to your views, and of course you don't like anyone else's view. The whole of Twitter and the social media has become one big arguing forum. It's crazy.
Help me with this. Do you take anything personally at this point when a newspaper misquotes you about what happens on a train, or when somebody's heard a joke that they didn't quite hear? Because I get it all the time. You said this, and in fact, you listen back to the tape, you didn't really say it. They heard it in their head. Can you be affected by that now, or is it the storm blows over? Because you've been in many storms in your career, as I'm going through at the moment. Do they all just blow over and you have to take them with a pinch of salt?
Well, I think it goes with the territory, doesn't it? It's the job. If I was a plumber, no one would talk about me. Yeah. I hate being misquoted, and I hate for people having a perception of me who don't know me. But that's fine. I expect that to happen. When things are written in the paper that's an absolute lie, that is really, really annoying. And I phoned Henry Brammer, my lawyer, said, let's sue the bastard. No, it's fish and chip paper. Take no notice of it all. People will write in the newspapers. They will print fake news. You've just got to get on with it and hope that the people around you, with any sense, realise that it is fake news. And, of course, it gives you something to talk about at dinner parties.
And what's interesting is about your popularity. I saw you live just a couple of weeks before, in fact, the week before, I think, lockdown in Kettering, and we had a beer afterwards. And seeing those fans and the affection you've got, it doesn't matter how many newspapers try and put people like you and I or anybody else that doesn't agree with the lefties down. There will always be the majority of people up and down this country that go on, Jim, you're one of us. And that's what you've always had, isn't it? You're one of us.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, someone coined the phrase for me, the people's comedian. I think that was a bit of a piss take. Being a comedian's great. You get instant response. Go out, tell jokes, they all laugh their head off and they all like you.
When I grew up watching you on TV, I mean, you were the biggest star on the BBC. I spent my entire Saturday night, as we sit here tonight, watching you. Big Break into Generation Game was the highlight of people's weeks. And again, that time in your life, it really was showbiz, wasn't it? It was hedonistic, it was fun. It was the halcyon golden days of show business. I don't even think Ant and Dec have that much fun today because it's just throwaway TV and there's a million channels. You were it, right? I mean, fun. It was brilliant.
And I didn't enjoy working at the BBC, to be honest with you. It had an atmosphere of what's he doing here? It had an atmosphere, an unhappy place.
But walking in there and then standing in front of that audience with your punters doing the show, I guess that's your ultimate revenge, because they can't take away the 12 or 15 million people watching you on a Saturday night primetime TV, can they?
Well, they don't care about that. They care about the boardroom and the politics and Janet Street Porter.
Yeah. How depressing is that? That the people we fund to watch people like you are brought down by people who tick boxes. It's very sad.
Can't please them all.
Jim Davidson's got a website. It's called jimdavidson.uk. You can hear his weekly rants twice a week, and you can watch the program in full by going to jimdavidson.uk. Subscribe there. I highly recommend the YouTube channel. It is an absolute delight to see someone so naturally funny. It's going to be big, this thing, and I can't wait, because the public are gagging for it. It's marvellous.
All right, Alex, take care, mate. Have a good night.
I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. Cheers, Jim. Ta-ra. Bye-bye. Jim Davidson live from his home.